Hey fellas, as always, please, please, please do not target, harass, bully, dox, or attack anyone mentioned, showcased, or featured in this particular video. This is just my personal commentary on some bullshit that happened a while back. Hey, what's going on everybody? Japan back in action here to talk about something else today, but something else? I want you all to just will yourselves back in time and think back to last year, early 2024, about the time of January bleeding into February. Maybe, just maybe, you'll remember what had happened, but maybe you won't. And hey, that's alright. There's a lot going on these days, so thinking back to your distant past might not be on the tip of your list of priorities right now. But if you'll recall, in the preceding months leading up to that of February, there was an up-and-coming rising star out on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube that made quite a buzz all throughout social media. They were known by the name of Hakan Yote, and at a glance, he seemed to be more or less an ordinary garden variety furry. Respectable in their own right, but perhaps just a little niche, nothing in the way of being a poppy fur. They had a cute Fursona, a fursuit partial, a typical social media presence. They were even already here on VR chat. And they were a content creator. Now, something somewhat unique about them was they like to make YouTube and TikTok videos. Hakan was also very active on VR chat. It's where he filmed his videos for skits and content and things, some taking place entirely on VR chat, some taking place IRL, especially with their TikTok videos. Hakan Yote's editing style was sleek and trim, very clean and creatively done, and their voice was very easy on the ears.
You can sit on a throne, but that doesn't make you a ruler. It just means that you have an ass.
Okay, well, I was not expecting that at all.
Although the more I listened to it, the more there was something uncannily familiar about it. Something that I just couldn't quite place my finger on until oh no. It can't possibly be! I know that voice! Heard it so many times before, in fact! No, they told me you were gone! No! Now wait, one more. We're not quite done yet. No! So this might surprise some of you all, and the reason why I bring this up will become readily apparent soon, but Kero the Wolf did try sneaking back into the furry fandom quietly a while back, as in from 2021 to 2024. So about 3 years' time. Less if you factor the specific months of activity or inactivity, but close enough. Except in this case, he didn't come back as Radiance or Kero or anything like that. No, he actually tried sneaking back in quietly under an assumed name, an assumed identity, something that would throw most people off his trail, allow him access to the fandom he so loved and holds near and dear to his black and withered heart. Now, what's interesting is that this did coincide with another ill-fated attempt at a comeback, and a rebrand on the main channel. You recall me bringing this up back in 2023 with this video, that ugly-looking Rexiom edit that was paired with a voice changer?
Oh, hi. Hi guys, and welcome to a new video.
Kero did not sound like Kero to me during that video. His voice was artificially a little deeper. He basically stated that he'd be shining bright against all the hate and all the negativity, maintain his innocence, and try to display a new sense of style, energy, and positivity for the masses. Yes, this was Radiance, because he was gonna shine bright against all the hate. He released a few videos go in tandem with that opening, but like his earlier attempts when he last tried to make a comeback, this eventually petered out. I'm going to assume that the videos didn't make the serious waves Kero was hoping for to be considered a triumphant return to form, so eventually, he just pulled the plug. So by this point, the Radiance rebrand was pretty much dead in the water. People didn't take it all that seriously, and all that negativity that followed Kero up to that point came bubbling back up to the surface. And new viewers weren't completely sold on it. I'm going to go ahead and assume that viewer attention and focus in watching his content didn't quite suit Kero's preferences. Kero had to consider another option here. Except, if I recall, the Kero the Wolf rebrand Radiance came out back in 2023. Right? Interesting detail, because while that was going on, Kero had been doing something else entirely during that time in the background. It turns out that Kero was living a double life! Who knew? While Radiance might have drawn heads and explained what Kero was doing on their main channel, Hakan Yote was quietly drawing attention and growing in the background, as a quote-unquote wholly separate person. A more detailed look at their YouTube channel showcases some very detailed and well-edited content with a lot of high-quality visual effects that are not only eye-catching, but also visually appealing. They're fairly short, the longest being about 8 minutes long, a couple being about, you guessed it, vor. While you probably wouldn't understand the context of some of these videos, it's basically fat material. Fictional smut based around him eating others. A friend even expressed abject horror that he fapped to one of them. Furry problems. What are you gonna do? Had no idea that it was really Kero he was fapping to. He felt like Ace Ventura when he realized he'd actually been making out with another man in that Ace Ventura Pet Detective movie.
Einhorn is a man!
Now, YouTube has a recurrent problem where if a video of yours is successful, it'll have a lot of views. But a lot of views doesn't necessarily mean a lot of subs. The Hakan Yote channel has about 1.19k as of the recording of this video, which, surprisingly, hasn't been deleted or privated yet. Kero has a little bit of a bad habit of deleting or privating things that might incriminate him. But if YouTube can be taken at face value, then his first upload was on October 9th, 2021. It featured his uncanny Yote fursuit head in his first video upload. If you recall, Kero was still uploading through December 2021 on his main channel, ending with the "Grindr is better than Twitter" video. So, modest growth compared to being the rising star he was after the Shane Dawson interview on his main channel, but hey, it was something at least. He even had a gaming channel on the side with 88 subscribers as of the recording of this video. TikTok was just a little bit more successful in that regard at 6,582 followers as of the recording of this video, and it's where you got to see a blend of VR chat based content, but also real life bits and skits and a little bit of gaming content as well. The content was definitely a little bit more varied here without such a focus on such fetishy content based on vor. It's where you got to see him display some of his uber-elite editing skills, encapsulated in shorts where he'd enhance real-life skits and display the better of his two fursuit heads. Because he owned two. One uncanny, one less uncanny, and more cartoony. All due respect to the original makers. The first upload was on August 17th, 2022, so well after the uploads on YouTube. Hakan Yote was even on Twitch. Only one video still stands with 100 views, all the others likely fading with time. It's because videos that post to the channel after a stream get automatically removed after a while, and Hakan hadn't streamed in a while. But the fact that he live streamed Dark Souls is further reinforced by clips uploaded to TikTok. That and League of Legends when that was still relevant, most definitely. Though, considering that videos of gameplay are nearing 3 to 4 years old now, I'm gonna guess that was kinda short-lived. Their posts on Twitter were about what you expect for a typical furry, though some details that would emerge show that they began attending furry parties and meets in and around the Pittsburgh area. Clearly just a coincidence, right? Pictures and posts would attest to this. Interesting. Hakan's first Twitter post was back on September 22nd, 2022. Hakan Yote is, or at least was, on Blue Sky, which gained prominence as an alternative to the dumpster fire that Twitter turned into. He kept up the act for as much as he was doing on Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok, posting inane and consequential mundane shit about his life, his love for Taco Bell, and other relatable garbage furries typically like to post. Remember these details for later. Now, what's also interesting is that multiple accounts under that particular name, Hakan Yote, or with associations to that name, had at one point in time spontaneously appeared across multiple websites at roughly the same time, back in 2021. Reddit, Ekka's Portal, it's a vor-based forum site apparently, 18 plus only, and Twitter being the most memorable to me. Thank you, Expose the FV. Their Reddit account is, or at least was, Hakanawoo's. They were even on FurAffinity, but not as Hakan Yote. No, they appear there as Yokai of Lunari. But if you notice the PFP picture, quote-unquote Yokai bears the appearance of the Coyote you might have seen here on VR chat. Yokai is a recurrent identifier for Kero, a pseudonym that's been used sporadically throughout his time online, most commonly before he became famous as Kero the Wolf. Yeah, FurAffinity banned Yokai under suspicion of the account actually being that of Kero the Wolf. As for that little command in the bio, sorry Hakan, I will and do judge you very hard. Now, needing some social interaction with other people, yes, he was on Telegram and joined various groups to share in his unique interests, like Feral Underground, didn't see that coming. Gee, wonder what that group is all about. By the way, it's CUMMING, not COMING. In any case, dude really seems to like ferals, another controversial subject for discussion, but I'll save that for later. We already know what Kero is into, the focus stays on him for the duration of this video. But he certainly didn't hide his known proclivities too well. Only thing that would have been the cherry on this shit sundae would have been if he opened up with a "arf arf" like he always did before. The more you look into some of the groups that existed at the time, since renamed in some cases, the worse all of this looks. like specifically feral porn being circulated around these same Telegram chat groups at the time. In any case, I'm sure Kero was so happy to get a chance at a social life and new opportunity to grow their online presence and build back better to their prior state of prominence on the main channel, with all of that hateful controversy chasing him wherever you go. So freeing and liberating. Your controversial past wiped away as you adopt a new Fursona, persona, new fursuit head, and a whole new look. Nothing could stop Hakan Yote now. Could it? Well, it all came to a head and came crashing down around him in February 2024. As Hakan Yote began to grow, as he slowly began to get noticed throughout the furry fandom, people began to look into him. The fans' reaction when even a supposition that Hakan could be Kero? Ah, hell no! The story had escaped me up until that point only because I didn't really notice anything until people began to make a noise about that time. Recall the dates I cited, 2021 being the earliest signs of activity all the way up until February 2024. It certainly caught me by surprise. While it took a little while, people that had been exposed to Kero's voice prior began to notice that this Hakan Yote sounded an awful lot like somebody they knew. Somebody that some had grown to love, to cherish, to watch and await each upload with bated breath. But over time, they would grow to revile and despise them for the heinous acts attributable to their dark and seditious past, and the mountain of lies told thereafter to cover it all up. People began to come to the same conclusion I came to, that this Hakan Yote was actually just Kero the Wolf in disguise. In true Twitter fashion, the rumor mill began circulating the supposition and allegation almost immediately throughout the various tweets and posts that circulated far and wide. People would even go so far as to say that Hakan Yote typed like Kero the Wolf. I mean, is that a reach? In any case, it was enough that after Hakan noticed, he actually responded to the controversy more directly. Hakan's response? Outright denial. I mean, I guess that's easier than taking responsibility for one's actions or telling the truth. I'm not Kero the Wolf. I'm my own original character, Hakan Yote. People really need to get their facts straight. You're all fools. Even Archive the Wolf would out Hakan Yote as Kero the Wolf, just casually saying the obvious in plain sight. Kero the Wolf's latest and not so greatest alias had been uncovered for all to see. Hakan Yote is in fact Kero the Wolf. Thanks to Alt Cunningham for their discovery. Hakan would go on record to say that this is absolutely ridiculous, that just because his voice is similar to Kero's doesn't mean it's him. They tried insulting the collective intelligence of the entire furry fandom and the internet for people quote-unquote believing everything they see and hear on the internet. Christ, use your thinking skills, people. It's really not hard. This is all I have to say on the matter. Only it wouldn't be all he had to say on the matter, because the matter was never truly settled. To his denial that he was Kero, though, people believed him, or at least some said that they did. Whether or not they really believed him, or just said so because they're zoophiles themselves, well, the jury's still out on that one. In any case, he made a big show of it, acting all offended and being all, "Well, I never," and getting all indignant about it after the fact. But it didn't stop there. The people weren't satisfied, and not a one of Hakan's detractors were all convinced. It was weird how Hakan reacted so adversely and got so defensive about the simplest of inquiries, above and beyond how a normal, well-adjusted person would typically react, right? Now, recall how I mentioned that Hakan was on Blue Sky? Now he was waging a two-front war defending his good name with accusations levied at him whether or not he were really Kero the Wolf. And that went over about as well as you might expect. Denial and dismissal. He was a little bit less performative and defensive on Blue Sky than he was on Twitter, but it didn't really help his case. He was much more dismissive and stuck up about it, acting like he was totally above the drama, but really all he was doing was acting on borrowed time. Even hypnotist Sappho left a little comment on his gaming channel, Hakan Gaming. "Hey bestie, I know that voice anywhere." A zoophile? Oh, I'm sorry, paraphile calling out another zoophile? Weird how she outed him like that, but I figure after all the hell she'd been through, she'd share in some of the suffering and out Kero for her own amusement. She already had a fairly low opinion of him to begin with, despite all the flim-flam and humbug of the drama that came out from the Kero the Wolf story. If you recall from the Coyote Lovely Hypnotist Sappho dramas, when Coyote Lovely asked if Kero were included in her grand plans of uniting all the zoophiles, Sappho complained that Kero wasn't useful. Which, yeah, I believe that. Dude only seems to care about himself and his own popularity. Screw everybody else! That comment has since been deleted. Surprise. I only mention it while it's relevant, but why would Hypnotist Sappho out Kero like that? I would say it comes down to contradictory motives and intentions. Sappho was very public and was willing to die on the hill, going out of her way to lay all of her cards out on the table during that whole mess, in a bid to make zoophiles more acceptable and palatable to the general masses, but only when she was sort of pushed to doing so, because she would have been exposed anyway by those that knew her or knew of her. Now look at Kero. Kero not only denies being a zoophile and wants to distance himself from the stigmas and negative connotations at all costs, but wants you to believe that he's been framed, a victim of mistaken identity and circumstance. It's a dirty little secret for him, something that's forbidden in the fandom and something he's been desperately trying to get away from ever since. Even though he's already admitted to aspects of zoo and bestiality in private to Cathorics, but I suppose that's neither here nor there at this point. Either way, I would imagine his nonsense made Sappho's efforts just a little bit harder for her, inadvertently. Not like she needed any help in that regard. So when she saw him hiding in plain sight like that, well, she probably couldn't resist taking a pot shot at him. Yeah, Kero is fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, a creature of habit. People very quickly drew correlations with what Kero the Wolf was into: vor, feral, and dog muzzles, or maws, if you prefer, not to mention certain other details that were openly displayed in Kero's videos. Like how that very same couch he'd sat on in the old Shane Dawson interview from years ago is featured front and center in one of his TikToks. Even the clothes, like that hoodie that Kero had been seen wearing a lot when Fursuit Partialing was on full display. Now, yes, anybody can go out and buy anything, but come on now. I've noticed that certain styles of clothing will periodically go out of fashion and become unavailable or are no longer sold to the masses by particular venues, and I gotta say, I'm impressed Kero kept that hoodie looking so consistent and in good condition. You see a generic hoodie, but comparing the two side by side, yeah, I see an exact match. Maybe Kero's wardrobe is like that of a Saturday morning cartoon character, where their entire closet is full of these on coat hangers. Either way, it would be with this revelation that Kero's earlier claim that he was moving to West Virginia was suddenly put into question. If the background of some of his videos didn't change, and the fact that he was still regularly attending furmeets in and around the Pittsburgh area, then how? What, did he pick up his entire house and take it with him when he left and now makes regular commutes? I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. Like, Pittsburgh's got an airport and you can feasibly drive up to Pittsburgh from West Virginia if you really wanted to. But come on! Given the timings and opportunity, that doesn't seem very feasible to regularly go on trips up and down the Eastern Corridor to go specifically to the Pittsburgh area. It would appear as though he never even left PA to begin with. So another lie for Kero. And to emphasize this fact, Hakan Yote posted pictures about this beautiful new hammock he got back in 2023, posting pictures online of it being set up in his room. The problem is that the fixtures of the room itself looked almost an exact match to pictures floating around when Kero the Wolf was still active. The floor, door frame, placement of the window, now obscured by burgundy curtains. Kero sure does have a bad habit of doing that. Taking pictures of backdrops that were frequently displayed at varying points when he was still gallivanting on the reg as Kero. Who knows? Maybe Kero secretly had his house airdropped into West Virginia. As for he himself, while the clothes and the fursuit head with the pobs obfuscate most of his visual features and physical characteristics, even a basic cursory glance can yield some insight. Same or similar body structure, especially when compared to other people standing nearby, the same hoodie, roughly the same height and weight. Other details aren't readily obvious but came from social media, location of his tweets, having a vor fetish. Now, understandably, a lot of people were skeptical about the claims, wanted something a little bit more tangible and resembling of proof than, just trust me bro, I got the facts. I mean, surely all these little details are just mere coincidences, right? Right? Now, at this point, people can't make calls for this Kero wannabe to just show his face. That would put these allegations to bed for sure. Now, there's multiple different reasons why you wouldn't want to just show your face to the online masses on demand, so I don't really fault Kero for not jumping at the opportunity to prove his innocence that way. Hakan could have literally done anything in response to this. He could have gotten one of his loser friends to pose for the camera and act like he was him. But then that would open up another door of possibilities when people found out that he did that, or recognize his friend and find out that his friend is not him, so maybe not the best move. God damn it, PacoPanda. Well, this aged like fine milk, don't you think? You know how happy I'd be if this all really were just fake? It'd be the better option here, for all of us. No, this wasn't the result of a lot of free time and a desire to create a controversy. No, the parameters for that are much lower. This is something truly demonic and dark that we're all just expected to just overlook and pretend we just didn't see it. So, sorry, Paco, you were dead wrong on this one, bud. I'm going to go ahead and be charitable and say that Paco here was caught up in the moment with a touch of that toxic positivity I keep hearing about. He's got his own issues and controversies to deal with. Not the focus of this video, but maybe some other time. Hakan would wind up posting a picture of his face eventually, by the way, which looked pretty uncanny, not gonna lie. Man, it's almost like two brothers separated at birth, right? Doesn't look exactly like Kero's, but closer than what people thought he looked like before. I can't help but feel as though the image has been doctored and photoshopped to some degree, and it's important to bear in mind, Kero's just a little bit older now than when he was gallivanting on YouTube back then. So 7 years older by that time, and now we're looking at 8. He's got something of a baby face, black hair, started growing out his facial hair closer to the time he was getting popular back then. Though looking at this more closely, I don't think this person really exists. Like something out of the Mandela catalog, am I right? One sticking issue that rubbed people the wrong way was the fact that this photo just comes off as a random photo. The background is placeless and doesn't really include his fursuit head or anything like that nearby. Some were even calling for a video, correlate the face with the voice, but Kero declined to comment or entertain that notion. Now, it's important to bear in mind, yes, Hakan Yote would attend furmeets and parties in and around the Pittsburgh area before eventually being discovered. I recall a friend of mine getting into hot water when people found out where Hakan had actually been going. Friend runs a pretty big event, but to spare him any unnecessary grief, I'll abstain from dropping the name of those particulars. My friend was one of the event organizers, but it's not like he stopped and checked each and every person at the door and hadn't really been keeping up with the whole Kero the Wolf hubbubaloo at the time. But it emphasized the idea that began to manifest in people's minds, knowing that Kero was going to furry house parties and the like. What? You saw him and did nothing? What the fuck? Yeah, whether it were room parties, house parties, or local events, Hakan posted pics and posts about it on Twitter, which tipped people off that he was quite active IRL during this time. Even seemed to have snuck into Anthrocon once or twice during that time based on pictures that would receive additional scrutiny after the fact. A good example of a very public and often visited event is the Pittsburgh Furry Bowl. Actually, it's just the Pittsburgh Fur Bowl. Hosted in Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, it's a monthly event hosted at the local bowling alley. Their Facebook page shows it to be a live enough event. Yeah, Hakan attended this too, just like he did prior as Kero, as prior pictures and photos from the past would confirm. What, did he keep his fursuit head on the whole goddamn time he was there? Did no one actually recognize him in person? Because it's just a little coincidental that there was a little change in policy requiring attendees to remove your fursuit head for the quote-unquote bowling alley safety after it was found out that Hakan was really just Kero. I guess it could be coincidental. Depending on your locale, they don't typically like you wearing masks or hoodies or things if it means you can become unrecognizable while committing a crime, be it robbery or vandalism. Now, I must admit, I am a little bit leery about some of those that visually saw Kero the Wolf IRL and hung out with him at either furmeets or parties and said nothing or questioned nothing and acted totally oblivious about it after the fact. You know that old saying, see something, say something, right? You mean to tell me that everyone that saw this wackadoo just show up one day, nobody recognized him or had even an inkling of who this stranger really was? Because Kero would have had to have taken the fursuit head off at varying points. Presumably, Kero changed her IRL look just enough to add a glance, unless you're really looking at them, or were even aware of the Kero the Wolf dramas to begin with. They'd be able to just blend on in with the general population and nobody be any the wiser. Presumably, because some people, like my friend, were questioned and looked at with a greater level of scrutiny than before. Perhaps rightly so. To overlook somebody so heinous, so dastardly being in present company? It did cause some people to be just a little bit more skeptical of some of the reactions of those that denied any knowledge, which is more understandable for big events but less so for small get-togethers like a house party. Like this post from Brince the Husky saying that he and his boyfriend were completely caught off guard by the revelation. Yeah, right. To some furries' credit, many PSAs and warnings did begin to float around during that time, stating that Hakan Yote is really just Kero, who had been banned from furmeets and would no longer be welcome, showing his known fursuit heads as the news began to make its round, so there was that. Moving forward, Hakan Yote would no longer be welcomed in such furry circles. As for the picture itself, I get that Kero likely did little things to try to change his look and played in Photoshop to try and spruce this up a little bit. He's a visual effects artist after all, and presumably knows a variety of tricks of the trade to do something like this. Even so, a few problems if this really were Hakan Yote. The shape of his face didn't really change, it's pretty dead on to the Kero the Wolf we all know and despise, and the way the facial hair is growing is also pretty dead on. Their skin color and complexion is fairly light, and is a dead match for Kero's. Now, if this really were AI enhanced, well, AI, if you recall, was readily available and still being played around with at the time like it were a toy, so, not so different than it is now, right? And for what it's worth, the service web browser Detect Fake Image detected this as likely being a fake image anyway, so take from that how you will. Self-declared experts that work in visual effects would look at the picture and claim that the image has been doctored, pointing out that while taking it at face value as a whole gives the appearance of being an entirely different person, certain details are eerily similar to Kero's facial structure and facial hair position. Kero has a little bit of a round baby face and piercing blue eyes, not dark brown eyes like this picture, so the eyes were darkened artificially. The dark hair has been obfuscated a bit with streaks of blonde that somebody played off as AI streaks. So the jig was up. The fan remained wholly unconvinced, and Kero slunk back into the darkness from whence he came, disappearing into the perpetual fog of war. Regardless of whether or not public opinion is fully settled on whether or not Hakan Yote really Kero the Wolf or not, Hakan would go on to declare that the only reason he came to Twitter in the first place was to share his work. But after seeing the dumpster fire Twitter turned out to be, after seeing the lies and rumors circulating about various people every day, he found it to be a disgustingly atrocious place and wanted no further part of it. After declaring this would be his last post, he ran off to Blue Sky and Hakan hasn't been posting since. Funny how the very same things that Kero the Wolf was complaining about publicly on the main channel while defending his good name would be the very same reasons that Hakan Yote would declare right before jumping ship. So recall that Hakan's first tweet was at the end of 2022, September, a real "Hello World" opening. I like how him posting his face and the explanation after that was his last tweet. And for some reason, he didn't even bother deleting Hakan Yote as an account, though his After Dark account was privated and has remained privated to this day. If I recall from what I saw last time, it's about what you'd expect. A lot of vorish shit that Kero was and is still into, and even after adopting a disguise, he couldn't even keep that fact concealed. I remember he liked a lot of dog muzzles, because that's normal, right? It would turn out that the original fursuit head was commissioned specifically by quote-unquote Hakan, the fursuit maker being Sylvan Bobtails, having taken pictures of Hakan before sending it back to Kero. Don't fault them, by the way. They probably wouldn't have known and were probably communicated with by Kero under the pseudonym Hakan during their interactions. Now, the other fursuit head, the 2D one I prefer, was made by R5 Suits. Again, doubt they would have known that this was actually just Kero the Wolf in disguise. I can't imagine they'd be all that happy for the bad publicity that would come out later when the big reveal happened. Also supposedly stole some art for their Fiverr account. A Your Character Here base that they just made transparent for the purposes of their avatar picture. So that's nice, plagiarism and theft of intellectual property notwithstanding. Hey, post-recording Tujo here. So in all fairness, I looked into this more closely. Apparently, Kero masquerading as Hakan did actually commission this separately, so the artwork wasn't just arbitrarily stolen, but it can certainly be argued that it was acquired under false pretenses. As in, through the use of an alternative identity, i.e. Hakan Yote. That is all. Their Fiverr account existed as they offer their skills in video editing for those interested. Remember, this is a recurrent tagline descriptor for him, that he was a professional VFX artist that could add that certain je ne sais quoi to whatever video he was working on. Whether or not anyone took him up on his offer is beyond me. Although, then there's their Buy Me Coffee account, which doesn't seem like it got much use. Very vory. Guess he was expecting to blow up one day like he had as Kero the Wolf, and it didn't quite pan out for him. Ah well, what a shame. So why a coyote is the next best go-to for a Fursona species? Well, I suppose it's appropriate in Kero the Wolf's case. Think about it. Coyotes have a little bit of a reputation for being perceived as filthy scavengers that like to prey on dead bodies out in the desert. Based on a combination of self-reports and admissions by Kero the Wolf throughout his conversations with Snake Thing, and other people that he spoke to in confidence, Kero's got a little bit of a thing for dead bodies. Think roadkill like foxes or deer. If you're curious as to why, well, while he might have zoophilic urges, he doesn't want to hurt animals. Aw, sweet thing. So he figures if it's already dead, the animal don't need its body no more. So that makes it okay, right? Alright. I do apologize. That's fucking disgusting. But there's a reason as to why the fandom reacts with a combination of anger and condemnation, but also outright disgust and revulsion anytime the topic of Kero comes up. Now, what is of additional interest is the origin of the pseudonym, Hakan. The Coyote or Yote part is whatever to me, plenty of the mangy mutts throughout the fandom, but Hakan? Hakan is a common enough name with Turkish origins, something you expect to hear from somebody from the Middle East. What, was it picked completely at random or what? Or did Kero just think it sounded cool and went along with it? So many questions left unanswered, so many mysteries left unsolved. Call me an uncultured swine if you want, but I had never heard of the name Hakan until Kero used it as a pseudonym. I mean, what a half-assed attempt at gaslighting any and all critics or detractors and then shaming them for suspecting you in the first place. Then another half-assed attempt at clearing yourself with a doctored-up image? Where did you think this was going to go? Oh, okay, clearly you're not Kero. We're so sorry we even suspected you of being Kero in the first place. Have a nice day, sir. Now, what's interesting is that none of these alt accounts over social media ever got privated or deleted that I can tell. Apart from that AD account or Blue Sky for some reason, they remain standing even today ever since February 2024 as monuments of this misguided attempt for all to see. Whether Kero couldn't be asked to do it or didn't have the heart to do it, I can't truly say. They remain standing as curious mementos to a bygone era in Kero's story. That time a wolf decided to pretend to be a coyote, but got found out. I mentioned this as Kero had a bad habit of deleting anything and everything that would wind up incriminating him up to that point. So the fact he didn't just nuke everything after the big reveal is certainly a change of pace. So just to recap, sporadically, Kero got to moonlight as Hakan Yote in the background while the furry fandom was focused and fixated on Kero the Wolf, the main YouTube channel, from about 2021 at the earliest to early 2024 at the latest. This coincided with Kero's attempts at simultaneously defending his good name by shaming the furry fandom for bullying him and buying into the lies and cancel culture. Then his attempts at propping up his main channel by resuming business as usual without giving the haters any attention. Also the very short-lived Radiance rebrand thereafter. That sound about right? That sounds about right. It is kind of inexplicable that Kero thought any of this would work. I mean, I guess this was more elaborate than his attempts at seeking an Anthrocon back in 2019 while the heat was on by just putting on a hat, sunglasses, and a face mask over his mouth, then posting about it on Twitter for laughs. As for Hakan, people kind of mentioned how it was so inexplicable that this Hakan Yote seemed to appear completely out of nowhere, out of the blue one day, and just so happened to have the same interests, hobbies, and skills as Kero the Wolf. And the same pornographic interests, apparently, though nothing that I could show here beyond suggestive motifs and censored imagery. And the dates when those accounts were created were roughly at the same time, the end of 2021 bleeding into 2022. So how did KiwiFarms take the news? Interestingly, a lot of the activity on the farm surrounding the whole Kero the Wolf debacle kind of peaked and then decrescendoed back in 2018. Obviously, all the way up to 2021 to 2022, while Kero was still releasing videos on the main channel. That largely died down by the time Kero's main channel exploits seemingly died down, with sporadic activity on the farms up until 2024 with the big reveal. While plenty of members on the site were intent on gathering as much information as possible and documenting every conceivable development, others were largely dismissive and received the effort with mild amusement than the furore or the number of posts from before. In other words, fuck off, you zoophile piece of shit. I mentioned KiwiFarms because while other parties like Pseudonym and Venus is a Bun, aka Mordecai, were responsible for bringing awareness to the Zootsatus leaks and Kero's involvement initially, arguably it was KiwiFarms that allowed the wider internet ready access to a portion of the material and kept discourse about the subject alive. It's at least partly thanks to them that Kero was held responsible in the court of public opinion, as well as the Furvengers and other self-described furry detectives, Archive the Wolf, and big-name YouTubers that got involved along the way. So I bring all of this up because it really showcased the desperation, the absolute lengths Kero was and presumably still is willing to go through in order to be a part of the fandom again. I mean, he said it himself in his Moving On video years ago when he took his leave the last time around.
Like I said, I will always be in this fandom, one form or another.
I guess in terms of what was truly sacrificed, the money it cost to buy those 2 fursuit heads, the time and effort spent on the videos that are attributable to him, and the effort it took in warding off the mobs. They had gotten a taste for being noticed and getting attention again, and that allowed him to get comfortable, all while the mask began to slip, and then suddenly everybody knew it was really him all along. What Kero did isn't unique to him, obviously. A lot of people get caught doing something truly heinous, or being a dickhead, or an asshole, or a terrible and manipulative person to people, maybe even something far worse. And so they get chased off or shut out, only to change their name, their fursona, their core identity, and then slink back into the fandom like nothing ever happened. All for access to people. We're social animals by default, and while you might need a lot of people or only a few people in your life, very few people can actually get through life without anybody, let alone anybody to hang out with, associate with, or spend time with. As far as blending back into the furry fandom, it's fairly easy to do, and if you can keep your mouth shut about your dark and insidious past for more than 5 minutes, nobody would be any the wiser should you change your fursona and online identity and just blend back in like nothing had ever happened. Few would even question it, but most people that do this aren't as prolific or as big as popufurs, content creators, artists, musicians, DJs, etc. The dramas they get into are far more interpersonal, but are sometimes aired out like dirty laundry. So the only people relevant to their story are the people that either knew them or were wronged by them. For a popufur, more eyes on you and more knowledge of who you are, your personality, your quirks and habits, varying interests, etc. obviously makes it a little harder to pull off. Not impossible, just much harder. So anytime there's a big controversy surrounding someone, some of them resort to adopting a new identity to get away from the controversy. Not everyone, obviously. Diesel Raccoon was made an absolute laughingstock of the entire furry fandom through his usual hijinks and his inflates you big and round response to the January 6th Capitol protests. It was just about nearly laughed off the internet. But he remained steadfast and true to his persona's name and look. I suppose that's admirable in a way. Jason Effects and Kabir, unabashed after the whole free-for-all fiasco that unfolded around Peace Wolf, have no reason to change their names, as they reveled in their controversies and simply kept themselves away from the rest of the furry fandom. But these people admittedly didn't do anything truly heinous and demonic like Kero did. Now, did they? While you can change your look and appearance to a certain degree, and then change your persona's name and look, there will inevitably be certain identifying characteristics about your mode of character and personality that will shine through, for better or for worse. Even for the best of practiced actors out there, it remains a challenge to keep up the act when your true emotions come through, your subconscious desires, or you have something to say or would like to express yourself in the way that you'd like. For some, it makes them their very own worst enemy as old habits die hard. I'd say Kero is no different in this regard. His words, his actions, his reactions, his demeanor, and behavior betrayed his attempts at blending into his alter ego. It remained unconvincing, even for the most gullible or naive of viewers. Didn't work with Radiance, and it didn't work with Hakan Yote. That mask slips off eventually, and enough people are going to pick up on that fact to figure you out. In spite of the impossible odds it would take to really pull something like this off, good thing Kero's kind of an idiot. His OPSEC was terrible. It's just like, wow, you really thought this would work, huh? Well, like I said, I just think back to what Kero had said in an earlier video close to the last time he left the fandom in the early days when the fandom thought he'd been chased out the first time around. That no matter what, he'd always be a part of this fandom, be it with another face, fursona, name, etc. Lucky us, huh? That regardless if we love him or hate him, he'll always be here. With us. Forever and ever. Perhaps the one unique thing about this particular situation that runs contrary to the norm of changing your name, fursona, and identity is the fact that Kero didn't completely abandon his main account to go try being Hakan Yote for the rest of his time online. Had Hakan Yote as his new alter ego gotten successful? Would he have? Or would the disappearance of the Kero the Wolf channel and the sudden rise of Hakan Yote suddenly elicit suspicion and be the catalyst for discovering Hakan Yote's true identity later on? Or was the plan to continue living this double life until his prospects improved? What was the end goal here? I do wonder if, hypothetically speaking, Kero did nuke his main channel before masquerading as Hakan. Would that have improved his chances of remaining undiscovered? A little bit, maybe, but I seriously doubt it. It still just begs the question why he even thought this would work in the first place. But, considering that he hid in plain sight for 3 some odd years, well, I guess he figured his chances were good enough that he would just keep on going. In any case, I don't think Kero would have deleted the main channel. He's too vain and petty to make such a radical move, even if Hakan Yote had turned out to have been more successful in a relatively short span of time. The main channel was the one time that Kero broke the mold and transcended 100,000 subscribers, a real milestone for him that he lost to the controversy almost as quickly as he'd gotten popular. Hakan Yote was a creative outlet, and a chance to, albeit somewhat briefly, dodge all the controversy and live the life of a typical furry on his own terms. Go to furmeets, make content, just exist without the roving hordes of angry-ass furries chasing after you. Sucks when I put it like that, right? Almost makes you feel bad for the guy. But I don't feel bad for him. Perpetuating a ruse like that, especially to cover up something so heinous and unspeakable, is a dishonesty too great for people to ignore. Even for those that associated with him during that time or accepted him as Hakan Yote. On top of the fact that he's a zoophile that associated with zoo sadists and engaged in unspeakably abhorrent acts that he shared in confidence with another. But I'll save that trip down memory lane for another video. I guess the moral of the story is, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you certainly can't fool all of the people all of the time. Eventually the truth comes out. Somebody will know something, or somebody will find out about something, or somebody will say something, or someone will remember and then say something. And then the ruse is revealed and your trick is over. It's a good reminder to remain on your guard and exercise a modicum of caution when meeting strangers in the fandom, because you never know who you're dealing with at the end of the day. You cannot escape your past any better than you can escape yourself. What's done is done, nothing will change that. And the more prolific you were, the more people knew of you, the more people remember you, are aware of you, and any controversies that follow you, well, it becomes that much harder even online to melt back into the fandom unnoticed. I personally take most people at face value until they either show themselves to be untrustworthy or accumulate enough red flags that I either put some distance between us or cut them off entirely. Entirely on a case-by-case basis, mind you. It's rude to pry, by the way, and so long as they show themselves to be a decent person, well, there's no reason to cause issue, right? Their past is their own. Share what you want, let sleeping dogs lie, and all that jazz. But if you become aware of something tangibly abhorrent with sufficient proof that something horrible pertaining to that individual actually happened, well, I would imagine that would change your perception and standing with that person. Wouldn't it? Not everyone that changes their name, Fursona, and identity does so for malicious reasons, by the way. Perhaps they just got bored with their Fursona design, or the changes to their chosen identity and Fursona design are a reflection of how much they themselves have changed as a person. But in my experience, most of the people that want to change their identity to the point of being wholly unrecognizable to those that once knew them usually do so for the purposes of deception. It doesn't just come from the spontaneous desire to express themselves a different way. There's usually an ulterior reason or purpose behind it. This can either be for benign purposes, such as avoiding online stalkers or hiding from malicious people looking out to get them, or it can be for malign purposes, distancing themselves from their own past actions after having been exposed and wanting a new chance at a social life, wanting to shirk any and all responsibility for past sins in favor of a clean slate to pursue life as they want. Thus far, Kero's been unsuccessful in this regard, and I prefer it stay that way. This has been just one more bizarre chapter in the grand saga that's been Kero the Wolf's time here in the Furry Fandom, albeit relatively short-lived by the time he'd been discovered. You all should know as well as I do that he's back on his main channel as himself inexplicably, for what that's worth, 85,500 subscribers no less. Far more than a lying sack of shit zoophile like him deserves, in my oh-so-humble opinion. Though since he came back, he seems to have lost about 100 subscribers, give or take. So his subscriber count now shows as being 85,400. So, progress? Question mark? My recommendation to the rest of you all is to keep your distance. For as much as he'd like to distance himself from his dark and seditious past, for as much as he'd like to assume the role of an everyman that's just following his passions for the benefit of those around him, who just so happen to like his content, I see a vain, shameless, and petty man, 8 years older from the day he'd been exposed, desperate and hungry to regain the popularity he once had any way he can. He hasn't changed, and he probably never will. I'm just thankful that his time as Hakan Yote was revealed long ago, and the ruse was unsuccessful. Till next video, boys and girls, take care and peace. I hope you all have a better one.
Let's go have some fun.